Google is punishing niche sites and continues to do so update after update. Now, there was an interesting article that HouseFresh wrote a couple of days ago, and some really interesting things came out of this article. First, let me explain what HouseFresh is. It is a website that does reviews, and it mainly concentrates on clean air for your home. So it's a pretty robust website. They have a team of talented reviewers and writers, and they have a really strict review policy. They buy devices with their own money and then run experiments within their own homes to give you the best idea of what best air purifiers would match your needs. Their team wrote a really interesting story that went viral a couple of days ago, talking about how Google is killing independent sites like their site. And a lot of really interesting thought processes and questions came out of this article. So let's just dive right in. Now, they pointed out, which was very interesting, that there's 16 companies that dominate Google search results right now, are being dominated by these brands or companies that are run by the top 16 brands. So we have big brands that are dominating the search, pushing down sites just like HouseFresh, that is very evident with all of the updates that we have been through, with the larger brands pushing to the top. HouseFresh continues to see a smaller and smaller footprint within search results, affecting their revenue and affecting their bottom line. Now, HouseFresh went to point out that the problem is most of these big brand publishers do not have any type of testing, nor do they mention any type of testing, and it simply reviews we cannot trust as the end buyer. They're doing no more than paraphrasing what is already on Amazon, performing well in the SERPs and getting most of the clicks. But what also stemmed from this article is if you Google the title, How Google is Killing Independent Sites, the top search results are coming back with Reddit. So there was a Reddit thread that opened up that links directly to the HouseFresh article, and Reddit is killing it right now for the title of that article, which stemmed a crazy amount of conversation about how Reddit outperforms the original source of the article. Now, I remembered that there was a lot of articles written back in June of 2023 talking about how Google admits their users were not happy with search experience after Reddit blackout. So there was a time when we did have a Reddit blackout. Google users were putting in their question into the search query and then appending Reddit so that they were able to pull up answers to their question within the Reddit forum. Reddit made a decision to have a widespread protest, which resulted in a Reddit blackout. This is where they set their forum pages private. Google executives went back to the think tank and came up with a way to resolve the frustrations and created Perspectives. The Perspectives tab was now available, and it promised to surface discussions from forums and from videos, TikToks, YouTube, Reddit, Quora, so that we would have the forum responses readily available whenever we did searches. Google's senior vice president at that time did talk about how Google was working on ways for search to display helpful resources and results without requiring users to add Reddit to their searches. This was in direct response to the Reddit blackout. With all of the recent updates, including the helpful content update, an article came out by Glenn Assop talking about how 10,000 product review search results were being dominated by discussion forums. So after Google came up with their idea of how to push the forums to the top, we see that a ton of product review key phrases and queries are now being taken over by the dominant forums, with Reddit and LinkedIn being at the top. The article went to great lengths to show us the amount of SERPs that are actually being taken up by the forums. And I really do think it all goes back to the Reddit blackout and Google responding to that by pushing forums to the top. Now, is this an overreach and something that we will see Google actual dial back? That is what we're waiting to see with any new releases of the updates moving forward. What we can say that right now we are in sad shape for individual or niche type sites. They are just not being favored within the updates currently. HouseFresh goes on to point out how the large major major brands are not even following the rules that Google says all of us need to follow. Now, this part is what really interests me. If you take a look at the difference between House Fresh and the major brands are not doing a lot of testing. In fact, I don't think they're testing anything at all. They do mention that they have a testing facility, or they mention that they've bought 56 different air purifiers. However, House Fresh dug deeper than that and pointed out that they didn't even talk about how they did the review process or what exactly they were doing during the review process by looking at their websites through Wayback Machine. Plain and simple, the big publishers are not following the rules that Google has said we all need to follow. They're not following the EAT checklist. They're not following the review products guidelines. You name it, they're not doing it. And with reading all of this, I started to have a lot of questions that came up for me as well. First of all, why do we feel everyone has to follow the same rules? This world isn't fair and it never has been. Do we really think that major large brands would have to follow the same rules as House Fresh? Are they being treated the same by Google? We all assume Amazon's not being treated the same as a House Fresh type site, but none of us have really dug deep into that discussion. And that is where I think I need to lead into with the next video. And I might even call on a friend to help me out. In the beginning of the House Fresh article, there was a really good question. What do BuzzFeed, Rolling Stone, Forbes, Popular Science, and Better Homes and Gardens all have in common? However, I think there's a different answer than the one that they gave. There is a common thread between all of those sites that I think needs to be pointed out. And more than that, I think we need to compare it, the common thread of all of those sites, to a typical niche site so that we can begin to see what the actual differences are. And then we can begin to understand how not every single site is treated the same. In fact, do you think the big brand publishers even think about the Google updates? Are they even treated the same with the helpful content update? If we take a look at the sites that were damaged during the helpful content update, do you see the suppression going on with all of the large major brands? And if they are being treated differently, why? I think there's a lot of answers that we still need to dig up and a large amount of data and discussion to go into how and if they're being treated differently, and if they are, why. There's answers within that question that we need to know more of. So stay tuned for the next video in this series.